Marvel Comics has a lot of grand and cosmic stuff crammed into its lore, but when this universe as we know it began in the 1960s with characters like the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, the superheroes we followed were meant to be more grounded and realistically relatable compared to the great gods and monsters of their main competitor, DC. I don't think every Marvel character needs to be a normal working class Joe that happens to have superpowers, but it is nice when Marvel goes back to their roots and uses real-world events and politics to inspire their books. Of course, the most popular example of that in recent memory was Ms.Marvel, the successor to the Ultimate Spider-Man, but there's another teenage superhero who fulfills this niche I've described. And that's Kamala Khan, the successor to the name Ms.Marvel. But let's back up a bit. Around 2016 to 2017 with MCU films like Captain America Civil War and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I was starting to get interested about getting into Marvel Comics proper. I did some digging and I found that at the time, one of the more popular characters in Marvel Comics was a young, nerdy teenage Muslim girl named Kamala Khan. In the 2010s to even today, I found it was hard to find positive Muslim representation in mainstream American media like this, much less something that was so close to my interests. So with this knowledge, I almost immediately started reading her debut solo series from 2014, written by G. Willow Wilson, an Islamic convert. And it became one of my favorite comic books of all time, even to this day when I've read so much of the medium. It got me into the wider Marvel universe, getting me into characters like Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider, Miles Morales Spider-Man, Gwenpool, Spider-Gwen, Silk, and even going back to the more weirdo classic characters like Rom Space Knight. While the MCU got me interested in the wider Marvel universe, it was Kamala Khan Ms.Marvel that made me a Marvel Comics fan, so let's get deeper into why by delving into the first 19 issues of her solo series. In my opinion, the first issue of a comic book is arguably the most important. In my experience, the best long-running comic books get their core appeal across within the first issue, as not only are first impressions important, but if you continue to read the next issues, you're always going to have that beginning in your mind as the series progresses for better or worse. This doesn't mean a comic book has to peak with its beginning, it just means it needs to make you care for these characters and arcs by the end of the 20 or so pages given. Side tangent, I find recent comic books being 20 or so pages spread across 1 month a big limit to their appeal, especially since writers are encouraged to not do one and done stories anymore and stretch their plots across 6 issues for the volume trade paperback, and even then, pre-orders for the single issues are what matters to get the series continuing, whatever. Luckily for our purposes here today, Ms.Marvel has a fantastic first issue. It's a simple tale. We get introduced and learn about Kamala through interacting with her friends and family before she sneaks out to a party and becomes an Inhuman thanks to the Terrigen Mist Cloud sweeping New Jersey. While there isn't a major villain or even action introduced yet, the character stuff is so strong this manages to be a fulfilling story on its own. In retrospect, it was also a really smart choice, as with Kamala being a newcomer to Marvel Comics both in and out of the story, she was naturally going to get the attention of readers both new and old. So telling this simpler but quality character-focused tale instead of rushing into the punches and slaps was a brilliant move to get people invested long term, and it sure worked out. Kamala Khan herself initially seems like a really silly yet charming main character, with her Avengers fanfictions and sniffing pork she can't eat, but these actions all come from a real place of dysphoria and belonging that many struggle with. While I was initially sold on Kamala through the Muslim aspect, her stories aren't inherently about preaching the Islamic faith. In fact, that's just one of many aspects of her persona that she struggles balancing. Kamala is a Pakistani Muslim teenage girl from New Jersey, which might seem like a lot of stuff to put on a character from the get-go, but people are like that in the real world, which made her instantly appealing to me and many other readers. Kamala is overwhelmed by all these aspects of herself. These are parts of herself she loves and wants to keep up, but sometimes those aspects can contradict with one another in society. For a personal example of what that might look like, I'm an Arab Palestinian Muslim gender fluid fellow who was born in California but currently lives in the Illinois. My queer identity often contradicts with my religious upbringing, but I still love both of these sides and want them to coexist. Humans are filled with all sorts of contradictions and inner conflict, and Kamala's character is very good at showcasing that. And this aspect of her character only gets more complicated when she becomes an Inhuman and gets body-morphing stretchy superpowers from the ordeal. While the character was originally intended to be a mutant like from X-Men, this was around the big push for the Inhumans at Marvel Comics, so if the creators want Kamala to stick around, she had to be an Inhuman. Though I think they made this compromise work fantastically, as the Inhumans are often connected to a royal space family, which gives extra messy layers to Kamala's struggles. She's not just a regular superhero, she's a new part of this long-lasting galactic dynasty. Granted, this aspect of her character isn't as well fleshed out as I'm making it out to be from this initial run, with the character mostly sticking to New Jersey for street-tier solo adventures. Hell, she meets Wolverine before she learns she's an Inhuman from Queen Medusa. But I do think being an Inhuman is an enriching layer of her background that makes the messages of her character arc hit harder. So, we've established that Kamala herself is a richly developed character just from concept alone, but this richness is helped thanks to her fun supporting cast composed of her Muslim family and non-Muslim friends, like Bruno, the obligatory charming white boy of the comics. I jest, since he's a great friend to Kamala, even if he does have those straight maleisms of wanting to date the nicest girl closest to him at times. Even if you're not familiar with Marvel Comics, most of the first Ms. Marvel comic run is very understandable to read, even with crossovers of characters like Wolverine, Loki, and the Inhumans coming in to interact and teach Kamala about the wider superhero landscape. Then Jonathan Hickman's 2015 Secret Wars event happened, which would end and reshape the Marvel Universe as we know it. A lot of Marvel Comics had their runs interrupted to do ending tie-in issues called Last Days, where the main characters of Marvel Comics would experience and grapple with the end of the world before being relaunched and rebooted into a new era in the coming months. Ms. Marvel's comic dedicates an entire story arc to the concept, not only wrapping up loose threads from the last arc while Kamala and her friends deal with the end of the world, but Kamala finally meets her favorite superhero, the one she got her name from, Captain Marvel, really giving the character a full circle moment at the very end of the world. And let me tell you, when an end of the world story is done right, it can really strike a chord with me as someone who spent a lot of their youth panicking about death and ending, so it was really refreshing to read an emotional yet hopeful take on the concept of a character I've grown to love so much over the last 19 issues. And yes, I know Ms. Marvel would get relaunched with a new #1 a few months later, with even the collected volumes continuing from volume 4 to 5, but I still consider this a good stopping point for this initial analysis of the character's comics. We'll talk about the second half some other time. Reading and rereading Ms. Marvel comics over the years, in between school classes and work, really helped me feel like I'm not alone in terms of being an Islamic Muslim in superhero spaces. Representation doesn't nor should it stop with one character, of course. We don't want to get complacent with just one perspective, and there's still a long way to go with Pakistani and Islamic rep in mainstream media, but Kamala Khan was a great step forward who managed to appeal to a wide audience even outside of Muslims like me. All sorts of people I know freaking love this character. There's a reason she was one of the newest characters to get her own solo Disney Plus show for the MCU at the time. She was even a main character in the shitty Square Enix failed live service Avengers game, and thankfully the much better and cooler fighting game Marvel Tokon. Characters like Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel, and Miles Morales Spider-Man were definitely breakout stars in the early 2010s Marvel Comics lineup for very good reasons. They were refreshing modern takes on the foundation Marvel Comics was built on, being the relatable superhero universe that could be outside your home. And that is why I love Ms. Marvel.